With no further ado, everyone, here's Neil.
Thank you, Chris, for allowing me to be of service tonight. So I'm Neil, gratefully recovering compulsive overeater from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I was told it was always important to qualify. I came into these rooms in October of 1989, and I am currently enjoying a 140-pound weight release. I don't say I lost weight anymore. I didn't lose it. I know exactly where it is, and I know exactly where to go get it if I want it. But today I choose abstinence. It is the easier, softer way. Um, and I talk about my three OA miracles. My first OA miracle was that I actually heard about OA because it's amazing how many people don't. Even now, even today. Um, I heard about it, and I heard about it in marriage counseling. Step one, I'm powerless over food, and my life is unmanageable, and my life was unmanageable. My second OA miracle is that I actually went out like a good procrastinator 6 months later and went to a meeting. Um, and my third OA miracle was I kept coming back, even though for the first 9 years, I treated it like a diet club and a social organization, but I love the people. My first meeting came to in Raleigh, North Carolina in October of 1989, and I heard the meeting in the church hall before I got there. There were about 60 people in there. They were all shapes and sizes and colors and creeds, and they all looked like they were happy to be there. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. Um, but I sat like a good backbencher and I didn't share and I didn't do anything, because that was my story. So I'll talk a little bit about what it was like when I came in. I think I was born a compulsive overeater, but I've resigned from the debating society. Um, it's like a friend of mine says, there's no chapter in the big book called Into Thinking or Figuring It Out. It's into action. I have to take action. Um, and I was a pretty, I was a, garden variety compulsive overeater. And I've done all the crazy stuff with food. I was, really overstimulated and was pretty sensitive as a child. And I used to come home after being bullied in school and just stuff food out of the refrigerator into my mouth. It's just like that was the way I calmed myself down. And then I isolated with more food and fantasy. That's what I did. I checked out because relationships were difficult. I also had a lot of issues with comparison. I compared myself to other people, and I didn't have any perspective on that. It was just like everybody always looked like they were skinnier than I was. And I realize now that, talk about, no sense of proportion. I grew up in the poorest of 100 counties in southern North Carolina. And we were one of the poorest counties in the United States. Um, and there were a lot of kids I went to school with that were suffering from malnutrition. If they got a lunch, it was the free lunch at the school. And I'm comparing myself to these kids that I'm playing shirts and skins basketball and football with. You can see their ribs. I thought that was normal. I was not normal because I did not look like them. And again, that's why this disease is, it's more than just a physical it's just more than just a physical allergy. It's also a mental obsession. Well, anyway, I came up and I gained and I lost weight and I gained and lost weight. Never more than 25 or 20, 25 pounds until I got to college and I gained the freshman 15. And then I'd learned how to overexercise in high school playing football. Um, and so I started jogging and riding bikes and restricting because, it's like then I had another obsession, which was collecting vinyl records and listening to music. So the more meals I skipped, the more money I had for buying records. And that worked for keeping my weight down. for a lot of years until I got out of school and got married. And then it didn't work so well. And then I started gaining weight. I gained 65 pounds the first year I was married. And my wife just wondered where the hell I had gone. And I really didn't know where I'd gone either. I didn't know what had happened. So I dug down and got my willpower set and then gained another 35 pounds on top of that over the next 2 or 3 years. And I was in bad shape at that point. I was emotionally, really emotionally checked out, not there for my wife and my growing family. And again, found out about OA in marriage counseling. And, and it's amazing. The marriage counselor looked at me after he'd known me for 5 minutes and he goes, I think you might want to try OA. He said, I think you'll feel at home for the first time in your life. And I looked at him like, how can you know that about me? Well, he knew me. He knew me. And again, I knew me I knew that I belonged when I went to the first meeting. I just couldn't do the work. And again, I sat in the back. Um, but I would hear stuff, repetition is, it says in the for today, repetition is the only form of permanence that we can achieve. So I kept hearing the same thing over and over and over again. And I wasn't willing to do any of it, but I kept hearing that it had worked for other people. The other gift for me in OA was people didn't tell me what to do generally. They generally told me what they did, so I heard about this worked for me and this worked for me. And slowly but surely, I began to be willing to work the program. I got very serious about it in 1998 after 9 years in and out of the program because my wife and I were getting ready to separate. And I just wanted to be emotionally stable for the first time in my life, either, because I was generally checked out, either checked out, bland and genial, or I was a rageaholic. So it was like I was insane. Um, and I didn't want my kids to have to go through any more pain than they were going to have to go through with this separation and divorce. So I started working it. I did my first, fourth, and fifth step. And that was a revelation for me. I found my first abstinence in the program during working on my first fourth step. They say it's ideal that, step zero is we put the food down, but that wasn't my story. I put the food down in step four. And I also took a chance and told my sponsor two things that I had sworn that I would take to my grave. Well, I found out over the years that shame stands for should have already mastered everything. And I was hooked on shame and perfectionism. That was keeping me held back. So I told my sponsor those two particular things. I made sure when I was giving away my fifth step in his home that I was really close to the door. So after I told him those two things, if his eyebrows raised, then I could turn around and run out the front door. However, he just leaned over and patted my shoulder and he said, I've done that stuff too. And I broke down in tears because I'd been carrying that garbage around me in my life for years. And in a blink of an eye, it was gone. It was gone. Um, that was the most monumental thing about that fifth step that I remember because was going through a separation and a divorce, and I was pretty numb. I got hung up at that time on step six because I was not willing to surrender resentment against my soon to be ex-wife. So I ended up, after about a year and a half of abstinence, in relapse and picked up on Christmas Day, 1999. And it was the worst binge I had ever had in my life. I binged for 4 days straight. It was like crawling into an emotional black hole of Calcutta. All the fear and the resentment and the depression came back, and I was lost. And I finally crawled out and called my sponsor, and he said, "Well, it's a good day to start all over again." And I came back, was finally willing to surrender sugar. I had to have a sugar binge to be willing to say, okay, I may be powerless over sugar. So I let go of sugar. and had 10 years, continuous abstinence until, you know, 2010 after an OA convention that I attended as a rep, and I binged at a theme park because I thought, there it is, thinking again, not a good thing for me to do. I was thinking that I could handle sugar for a couple of days, and it didn't work out that well. I just had a lot of shame and fear and depression come back. So I finally had to be willing to fess up to that and start all over again with a new sponsor. Um, and I'll talk about my third relapse. My third relapse came in 2014 when I finally admitted that I'd been in relapse for about a year, that my higher power had been giving me very clear instructions that I was powerless over flour, any kind of flour. And I was, all I could do at the time was be honest about it and complain about it at meetings and after meetings. And, finally I just hit bottom one day and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm willing to try to do without flour. And today my abstinence is no sugar, no flour, no artificial sweeteners, no alcohol, and I use a scale most of the time to weigh my food. That's boundaries. I heard all of that stuff when I came in. And I wasn't willing to do any of it. I remember thinking, never, never, well, never say never in this program, because I'm happily doing that today. One of the things I've realized is that God has taken nothing out of my life that was good and gave me everything that was good. So in other words, I always get a kick out of it when I hear people say, well, I can't do that because I'd feel restricted or I'd feel deprived. I'm deprived every day. I feel deprived of depression, of shame, of fear, of confusion. That's what I'm deprived of when I let go of those foods. Um, but it's about the steps. It's really about the steps. And today I try to live in steps 10, 11, and 12 every day. I mean, that's a must. I do steps 1, 2, and 3 on my knees every day. I may be working one of the middle steps, as I call them, but I try to live in steps 10, 11, and 12 every day. Um, because that's, daily work. It's daily work. I have to work this program. That is my part. God does part of it, which is what I call my higher power. But I have to do the rest of it. All of my relapses came because I stopped working the steps. I stopped talking to people about what was going on. I stopped, I was going to meetings. I was acting like an OA star, but I was not doing the work. And that's what happened. And it always happens. Food was always the last thing to go. Sanity went first. Honesty went first. Um, any sense of common serenity went first. Food went last, always. It always. And again, it's like today, I am not willing to play games with my abstinence, physical, emotional, or spiritual abstinence. I remember what I was like. I was passive, aggressive. I was bland and genial when I should have said no, or I should have said I don't like this, or I was a rageaholic. I don't want to live like that anymore. I'm 71 years old. And I don't know how many years I've got left on this earth, but I want to live them in the sunlight of the spirit. And I get to do that as long as I keep working the steps, doing the work. I love sponsoring. That's a gift for me to get to know somebody on that level. I have sponsored a woman in this program for 18 years. That is a joyous relationship. I mean, I cannot describe what that has been walking that journey with her in the program. Um, it is very important for me to give back to this program. I also do service. I stepped down as head of the as chair of the 12 Step Within Committee in Region 8. Um, I'm on the I'm the region rep for my intergroup. I am a meeting contact for a new in-person. I say new. We've been trying to get it going for 2 years, and it wavers, but we had 9 people there the other night. So it's an in-person meeting, and I'm grateful that that meeting is coming back. And again, I do sponsoring, I do outreach, I talk to newcomers.
5 minutes.
Thank you. I do what I can do. Um, and then I asked my higher power, whom I choose to call God, what the next thing is, that the next right thing that I need to do is, it's one of the things I've learned in this, and there's a great reading in for today, April 30th. It says, I'll quote part of it. It says, pain persists until I give up trying to do things my way. I am grateful for the suffering and struggling that brought me to this understanding. Let go and let God is an idea I could never have accepted had I not paid the price exacted by my illness. I have also heard pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And if I'm in the food, I am suffering. I may fool myself and think I can get away with it, but my thinking is cloudy. I am not playing with the proverbial full deck. And when I am in the food, it's very easy to deceive myself. It's very easy to deceive myself that I'm deceiving other people. Um, the joke's always on me and it's not funny. Uh, I have to keep doing this work. And if I keep doing the work, miracles happen. I was at the World Service Convention in Orlando recently, and I mean, that was a joy to be back in fellowship in person with hundreds of compulsive eaters from all over. Um, I cannot describe what that's like to be able to get real hugs again, to be able to share, to meet somebody after a workshop and talk about something. And all of a sudden we are sharing on an intimate level. And I've known this person for 10 minutes. That is a gift for me in this program. And I keep getting it as long as I live in steps 10, 11, and 12. Food wasn't my only problem. Um, I had horrendous credit card debt. And my first sponsor said, well, why don't we do a financial inventory? And I did a financial inventory in OA, and I found out I was selfish. Big surprise there. Selfish and self-centered. I spent money on me, had a problem giving at meetings, had a problem giving to anybody. So I had to practice. It's like my sponsor said he said one of the wisest things I've ever heard. He said, to experience abundance, I have to practice abundance. I have to act as if. And I could do that, because I had to act as if I had a God. At first, I didn't know whether I believed in God, but I had a God who actually wanted more for me than I wanted for myself. So I acted as if, and I did the work. And I did the work, and a miracle happened. Over the years with my financial inventory, I paid off every dime of my credit card debt. And then I turned that money over and paid off my mortgage. And then I turned the same money over, and started funding my retirement. And when I got laid off from my job at 63, I had enough money. That is God doing for me what I could not do for myself. Another miracle of the program. And I get to keep coming back over and over again, day after day, and live in these miracles and see miracles in front of me, like I see you, to keep coming back, to see people, who want to and are living real,
1 minute.
dynamic, wonderful, useful, happy lives. Um, and I can do that too. All I got to do is keep working the steps and keep coming back. So thanks for letting me be of service tonight.